Tonight, we're so happy to have our first ever gathering for our Conscious Movie of the Month group. And tonight, we are so happy to welcome Allan Kaplan, who is hosting this discussion. And for many of you who know Mark, you know that he is an award-winning filmmaker. He is a true pioneer in the conscious media and transpersonal media movement. He's been a researcher at Paul Allen's think tank. And I know he currently consults and advises filmmakers on how to raise consciousness through filmmaking. And he's also considered the world's leading expert researcher and theorist on the application of integral theory. So obviously, Mark, we are over the moon that you are here to shepherd us through this and to bring so much wisdom and information to the Matrix. And I know we're going to start with a little bit of background information on the filmmakers, and then you're going to basically help us see how they were able to give us this most spectacular experience and raise our consciousness in the process of watching their movie. So first and foremost, welcome to everybody here. Well, we're super excited that you've created our new this new group for us, and really looking forward to tonight's conversation.
Thank you, and thank you, everyone. Here in synchronous time, and those who are going to be doing it asynchronously. So I want to start with a little meditation perception practice to get us in the right space for our session, our experiment, our play here. So let's get comfortable and close our eyes when we're ready. And just focus on our breath. Just observing it. And now let's bring our awareness to our individual subjective spaces, our I space, to our thoughts and feelings, just observing them. And if we can, continue to observe them, but expanding our awareness to include our physical sensations in our body. And to the sensations of the objects our body is currently interacting with. The chair, the floor, feet on the floor, I'm sitting in a chair, whatever it is, feeling that. Also, in this space, holding the awareness of the sound that we are hearing, both my voice that you're hearing and the sounds around you in your own space there. This is our objective space. And now let's extend that objective space awareness to also include the technology and the devices we're using at this moment to listen and watch and connect with each other. And hold in your awareness how these devices are translating the sounds and the images, our sounds, into tiny bits of information. Now bringing our awareness, extending our awareness to also include how these devices are transmitting these bits of information that carry the bits of our beingness beyond the devices through wires or wirelessly or both. And this is our collective objective space. And feel it even extend further as these bits of information are transmitted to the internet and sent around the world. And then how our bits of beingness being spread around the world are then reassembled at each of our access points and enter into our field, creating, if you will, a expanded we space. See if you can feel how this we space is transcending time and space itself, with some of us in different time zones, in different countries, maybe, or even different continents. And also in this moment, to hold all this and also to try to expand our consciousness even further to how each of us are here in this moment as part of an evolutionary journey that we are each on. And we are coming together at this point in time and space on our separate journeys and connecting about this film that we've all seen somewhere along the trajectory of our individual evolutionary adventures, and how who we are in the moment when we're seeing it affects how we see it. And who we are now, having seen it, reflecting on it, affects how we now perceive it. And how this moving image is the fruition, is the fruit of individual creators who somewhere along their own evolutionary journeys were inspired and drawn to tell this story, pulling in from their own experience in life, pulling in from all sorts of resources, past movies, culture, society, philosophies. And here we are in this moment. Called to reflect upon it and see what it can teach us. Focus on your breath one more time. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes in this free space we now have. So, welcome. And I'm going to talk a little bit before we open it up, say a few things about the film and why we're here, why this club is here, and why I'm here. To start with that, both me and this group is here, and all of us who brought it to you are here because we believe that this is a very important moment in the evolution of our species, in our civilization. We are at a crisis point. And media is an essential tool to help us through this crisis and through this transition, because real quickly, just in one sentence, it's a major shift is in consciousness. And the most powerful tool we have to affect consciousness collectively is media. And we're here for you, the conscious filmmakers, and those who love movies and want to see movies and spread movies that are conscious, that help us, and to uplift society. We are, pretty much I would say every one of us recognizes that something's happening here. And I believe we all feel the call to do something. And as media creators, I believe this is our call to help elevate consciousness through these challenges. And if you want to know more about it, you could check out the mini course that we did earlier, where I unpack it some more. And I'll be talking about it periodically as we go through, because it's the driving thing why I'm here. And just real simply, it's a time for all hands on deck. So if you love conscious movies, and if you're a maker of conscious movies, it's time. It's the big league, and we have to bring our game. So hopefully I could contribute to increasing your capacity to do this through our dialogues and through however else I can help. So the Matrix now. The Matrix is one of the films that, according to my research, has had a major impact on our collective consciousness. And that has to do with where the filmmakers were coming from, what they were trying to do, and also the timing of it. But it just happened to be just at the right moment, so that they were in sync with the zeitgeist. And even though that sounds like luck, there are actual ways that we as cinematic artists can actually attempt to tap into that. And I'll be talking about that in a future course that we'll be having. So, just real quick, why this has the evolutionary impact it has, because the moving image has in it embedded structures of consciousness. And these structures of consciousness are the same ones that we individually evolve through and societies and cultures evolve through. There's parallels to all of it, and our art is reflecting it. And the moving image has evolved, and it has reached a point in 1999 with The Matrix. And also that same year following The Matrix was The Sixth Sense. These two films did similar things, and combined, they shifted our collective viewing consciousness. And what that is these multiple dimensional stories that actually challenge our perception of reality and expand our concept of self and world, and penetrated this construct in the popular culture. That's really the key. This kind of construct was around before in avant-garde films and other art forms and all that, but this penetrated the wider field. So where did these guys come from? Well, actually the girls came from. They were guys, now they're girls. So they evolved, or they woke up to their own trans beingness after they did these films. Before the films, before The Matrix ever existed, they were raised in a home where at the dinner table, everyone talked about philosophy. So with their parents, they would have these conversations, and then they would read, everyone would read a philosopher and then talk about it. They were raised on philosophy. And they love philosophy, they're really into it, and they were also loved comics and video games and all that, and they were trying to find some way to combine all that, and they kind of felt like this whole idea of us not being truly aware of reality, that we're in our own reality fields, which 20 years later we're seeing, they were right. And they got this, of course, from other philosophers, and including Ken Wilber, who is one of the founders of integral theory. And they were avid readers of Wilber, and they tried to integrate his philosophy, which is actually, integral theory is really just a map for how the integral structure of consciousness operates. And the integral structure is a stage of human development that is reflected through us individually and through cultures and societies. So we all evolved through stages, and the stage that they were trying to express was the integral structure, but they were very smart. They recognized that that is a higher stage of development from a lot of the viewing audience. So they tried to give us all the stages of development so that we could access it. So we have the tribal culture of Zion. We have the machines, which is the rational industrial age gone amok. We have the mythic battles and these, these great good and bad, like all of these classical structures. But the underlying philosophy and themes and embedded in the story and in a lot of the imagery is basically integral. And what that means is that there's multiple dimensions of being, of perception. And that these we are often unconscious of. And the process in this film of awakening us to the multiple dimensions of this world, of course, starting with his choice of the red pill or the blue pill, we also, up to that moment, have thought the world we were seeing was real. And up to this moment in moving-going history, we would be right. But once the film took the pill and brought us into this other, more real world, the shift that the film is all about is that waking up shift from a limited perception of consciousness that, because it's limited, it's not really real. It's not a reality. It's not reality in its fullest. And that's where integral theory comes in. They tried, if we're at the integral structure of consciousness, we try to unpack all the dimensions of beingness. And the meditation I gave you is a taste of that structure of consciousness. Our individual subjective reality and our objective reality, our interrelational reality, and our systemic reality. All these four dimensions are aspects of our fuller field. And the film unpacks those all the way through it. And within this field is the evolutionary arcs of the individuals and of all these older dimensions. So that is kind of what the shift was in the collective consciousness. Is after this film and after The Sixth Sense, you get more and more films playing with these multiple dimensions of reality, layers of perception, waking, and these meta-perspectival stories, which is, I talked about this in a post online in our online discussion area. And what it is that shifting of perception can change everything. And that's what this is all about. This is all about how important perspective taking is. And how it affects everything. How we see ourselves, how Neo saw himself, saw others, saw the world, everything was all a perception. And the second his perception changed, everything changed. And it was like, whoa, what's going on here? And a lot of people, after they saw the film, report that they went out and it was like they were, well, it was very similar to the experience that I had, which was I was hyper aware of the moment, of everything around me, and questioning the reality of it. And that is what they were going for. And that's the shift. and many of us, Sue, you brought this up earlier, that many of us had that experience afterwards and was like, could hardly remember the film. But that didn't matter because the shift happened. And often when a shift like that happens, everything before is almost like just in this mist of that pre-perceptual field. We were, for those of us who had that shift, we were actually brought into a whole different perceptual field. And they did it with the story, which is key. They also did it with the visuals, like the classic, this film introduced what they called bullet time, which is when the camera spins around and it's like everything slows down and the bullets are coming, you know, and it's like that slow motion. What that kind of cinematic approach does is it unpacks the moment, slows it down. And just what that does is perceptually, it gives us this kind of visceral experience of unpacking the moment. So it visually unpacks and stretches out the moment. So, for example, towards the end on the roof, when the bullets are coming at him, and slows it down, and he's going like that, and you know, you could feel like, you know, each like moment of him, like, is it going to hit him? Is it going to hit me? You know, it's like this, you know, it's expanding that perceptual reality. And then we get Trinity's reflection, like, how did you do that? You were moving so fast. So it's kind of like what we're seeing is we're being shown this kind of visual space where for us it's slow. We're entering into it slow, but we're being told that it's actually high speed and it's beyond normal speed. So what that does in our consciousness is it's training us in shifting perceptual fields, even temporally. So that's an example of how they're integrating the consciousness shift that they're attempting into the visual experience. And that's just one example of how they're doing it. So that's just a rough introduction, and I wanted to now open up the floor for dialogue, reflections, questions, sharing of experiences, and go from there and see what we come up with together.
And I was just going to say for myself, what I was sharing with Mark was really exactly what he was talking about, that I didn't really remember the movie at all, but I can tell you exactly the size of the full moon that was so big and bold in the sky as I was driving down Lincoln Boulevard from Marina Del Rey. I can remember so clearly how I felt, or I wasn't even feeling, I was out of my mind driving down the street. And I remember being so amped up that I thought, there's no way I'm going to be able to go to bed tonight. Like, it had such a powerful impact on me. And yet, you know, as we were getting ready to watch it this week, and my husband said, you know, brought up something, and I couldn't remember. I just remembered like sort of the key characters, and apart from that, I did not hold on to a lot of details. So I definitely fit that description of what you brought up earlier. So I just wanted to share that. It was really a highly remarkable moment in my life.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, I don't have a question, but one thing that I've admired about this film is how it appeals to individuals with different states of consciousness. So what I remember from seeing it when it first came out, to me, it was, another action movie, and it was cool and slick, and it was entertaining, but it was, an action film. And then about 10 years ago, I was at my gym doing a spinning class. And instead of, a terrain on the screen, they were showing the Matrix. And so and it was the scene at the Oracle. And already my consciousness had shifted to the point where I was like, I didn't even see that movie. This is a whole new movie with a completely different layer of meaning. And just, immediately had to rewatch it. And then I haven't seen it for 10 years until this week. And, after the last, especially 6 years of a, really consistent practice, it was like seeing it again through a different set of eyes. And so it's really the film that keeps on giving. And I love hearing the background, because I think, even with Conscious Good as an example, we realize that raising consciousness, we're all not coming from the same experience, or, into even conscious good at the same level of consciousness. So how do we make this a place for everyone, regardless of, where they're coming in? And so I just really applaud the filmmakers, and can't wait to see their films when they come out. So anyway, that's...
Thank you. And that brings up a really important point for both filmmakers and viewers to understand, is our experience of a film is really dependent on where we are at the time of we're seeing it. And really any film seen at different stages of our life can be totally different experience for us. And as you point out, a film like The Matrix is accessible to all different stages of development. And that's because it was designed that way, to include all the different stages. And it was very interesting, my research, what I discovered is that the top 10 money-making films of all time all have at least 3 or 4 different stages of development represented in the film.
Wow. Do you have a list of that film? Is that list that you shared before?
The list I shared before are all the films that have tested positive for integral structure.
Got it.
All
I would be so curious, the films from that list. So if you have a chance, maybe you can share them with the group.
Sure. The film Avatar is a great example. Okay. Avatar, and you have a very clean example of the structures of consciousness represented in the different warring cultures in the film, which is beautiful. You've got the tribal, which is the magic stage. You've got the mythic, which is the military and their consciousness. Right. You've got the rational, which is the business people, who are there for the money, for the resources. And then you have the enlightened social scientist who's pluralistic, who's understanding the different cultures. And then you have our main character who evolves from that mythic soldier archetype all the way through. Now, we don't know yet if it's a pure integral film because it's part of a trilogy. But it's at least high pluralistic, near integral because it's integrating these multiple structures. And the key to remember here is that these stages of consciousness are reflected in our technologies, in our political systems, you know, so like, you know, when you have the rational stage, we have the industrial society, you know, that's when that consciousness was born. And then we have the archetype of the scientist or the businessman is connected to that. And all the technologies that were born in the industrial age are reflecting that stage of development. And they actually help us to, by using and interacting with the technologies, it uplifts our individual consciousness. So anyway, yeah, it's amazing. And so I would say, especially for us at this time, the work we need to do to elevate consciousness is we need to really kind of make sure that we're reaching across the different stages.
Agreed.
Because our problem is that we have not enough people at the higher stages, especially the people in power. You know, we're having, and a lot of Western societies are kind of in flux because there is a resurgence of the lower structures because we're facing a major transition. And that part of this has been helped. This is, I was talking about this online a little bit, and I wanted to bring this up real quick. And that the matrix is part of this. I believe that the last 20 years, this expanding of the integral structure into the wider field of all these movies that the matrix helped to bring about, I believe has been preparing us for this evolutionary shift.
Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah. And that is the connection between when we're making films, either when we're conscious enough or not, we are connecting in some way with the collective. And if we are, as conscious filmmakers, we can have tools and practices that can actually help us to tap into that more clearly and better, so we can try to ride the wave of the moment. So that's, you know, so, but it's, and the reason why it's important to have the different structures in the film, in our work, is because for people to evolve their consciousness, you have to start with where they're at, so they can actually connect with the story and the characters. So if someone's at mythic, but there's no mythic structures or characters, they're not going to get fully invested in the work. And you need the audience fully in order to make the shift.
Oh, that's so brilliant, Mark. Thank you for explaining that. I had a question about the film, a scene in the film, and I'm hoping that Mark or someone here can answer it. So the Oracle, that scene with the Oracle, she tells him, you're going to have to choose between Morpheus's life and your own life. And he leaves, and you know, we learn that the oracle only tells you what you need to know. And so that knowledge somehow led to Neo believing that he knew how to save Morpheus and that he could do it. Can you explain kind of that, you know, development in the script, in the film?
Yes, that's beautiful. It's a great example here of embedding the evolutionary process in the narrative. The idea that what the oracle says to everybody is not like the ultimate truth, but just the seed that the person needs at that moment for them to evolve into where they need to go. And that is the key here. That is, you know, you can't tell anybody, you're here and you got to go there. So just make the shift. We have to struggle. We have to kind of experience. We have to grow through experience. And
we have to come to that on our own.
Yes. And she just gives the seeds, you know, that are necessary to be in our consciousness for us to have a chance of making the shift.
That's really genius.
Isn't it? It's beautiful. It is beautiful. Yeah.
So for Neo, it was the idea that he was, at that point, he wasn't the one. All he was thinking about was, you know, Morpheus was leading this revolution and was willing to sacrifice his life for Neo, and Neo couldn't let that happen. He couldn't live with himself if he let that happen. Right? And so he somehow, but the part that I love is that he thought of a way to save him, you know, on his own. And then that really seemed to be the turning point, right, in his development.
Yes, it was. And this is a beautiful key that you're bringing up here, is that the beauty is that when she told Neo he's not the one.
Sorry, kid.
That was a beautiful seed. Because first of all, you know, as we all who've been explorers of consciousness, we recognize that the ones, the bodhisattvas, the teachers, don't consider themselves bodhisattvas, right?
That's right.
The ones that tell you they're bodhisattvas are not bodhisattvas. And so that was the perfect seed to give the potential bodhisattva, right? You're not the one. So then that is lifted off of him. He doesn't have to deal with that anymore. Now it's got to, then he's like, you know, but people are looking at me as I'm the one. How do I, you know, that became the grist for the mill of his development internally. Beautiful.
Hey, Mark, I have a question for you. You talk about perceptual field. Is that a thing?
Oh, I love it. That's great. Is that a thing? Hello?
And by that, I mean, is it, because the way you talked about it, it sounded like something that had been crafted, like intentionally developed and built.
Yes, it is. Our perceptual fields are developed and built from the day we're born our experiences, our perceptions, our what the culture, what our family believes, and how our family is, what the culture tells us, what the society, all of that creates an internal construct field. Now, this construct field is limited by what the culture and society and the world around us feeds us perceptually. And we each have these construct fields. You know, for example, a really simple way to talk about it is the first time as children we see a tree. Okay? We don't know it's a tree. We don't know it's an oak. We don't, we don't know what it does, anything. You know, I actually had this wonderful experience. My wife was a nanny, and she was taking care of this little girl, and I was there when she saw her first tree, and it was amazing. It was just like she was like, just like this. What is this? You know, and it was a redwood tree, so it was like, whoa. And she like hugged it and talked to it, and you know, it was like, you know, it was just an amazing, magical moment, you know, and just the power of it, like, you know, and she was there with it for an hour, touching it, going all around, looking in the, you know, it was just, you know, that is that pure moment of awareness, that empty mind, that, you know, that is without any construct fields, either perceptual, emotional, or mental construct fields. And as we go through life, we build them up. So we learn about trees, what they do, you know, what the different types are, and all that stuff. And by the time we're adults, we don't even see trees anymore. They're just, you know, these, you know, we know what they are.
Right. That's so good.
See how that's a field that we're now in. We're in a construct field where we've established that reality, and we're not open to expanding it anymore. It creates a field that we can't see outside.
Is there anyone else on the call who wants to bring up a question or a comment? Because I want to talk about another scene I love, if not. I just thought, because I am going to have to hop off at 8, I thought the Agent Smith, when he's trying to break Morpheus, and he's talking about humanity and comparing humanity to a virus, was so ahead of its time in a way. And I was incredibly moved by that speech, and really gave me cause to reflect on, you know, the greater populace. And it's the smell of it. I know, right? Zach says it's the smell of it. I know, that was so good when he did that.
The smell of it, yes, yeah, is this. You know, and in a way, is that scene kind of also kind of touches upon the nature of us being in a body. And it's actually like Smith is talking about being in that body, you know, like how it.
Yeah,
you know,
how he hated it, right?
Yeah, which is a beautiful representation of what Allan Watts calls the skin encapsulated ego. Right? Once again, there's the philosophy integrated into the actual, you know, reality. And the whole speech of humans being a virus, I forget who the philosopher is, but they took it from a philosopher. So it's part of, you know, that whole their whole kind of resources that they pulled from the world of philosophy. It's just beautiful. Yeah.
Brilliant. I hope that we get to talk about Cloud Atlas at some point in this movie club, because one, I love how divisive it is. My best friend hated it, and I thought it was pure genius. So it seems to have its critics as well. But I also read the book that it was based upon, and it was similar but yet so different. So I'm just going to plant that seed, Mark, that
Okay.
not right away, because we just had the Matrix, but at some point I think that would be a really juicy conversation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's on the list, most definitely.
Right, well, I can appreciate that not everybody wants to be videotaped here, so that's okay. And obviously, we are getting a chance to see some of the live chat to appreciate different perspectives. So, with I guess if
Well, I have one more question for
okay.
Mark. Sorry,
So,
Sue.
Trina, and then Trina,
So,
you can wrap it up.
Oh, well, no, I want to know, Mark, so what was your favorite scene and why?
I have so many of them, but the, the one that came to mind when you said that was there's a shot when he's in the pod, when he wakes up inside the pod, and he comes out, he puts his head up and he looks and he turns and the camera turns, and then all the fields of pods and just how they did that was like just such a visceral expansion of consciousness for me. It was like they captured that horror, the waking up to this horrific reality, and it's like it's like in that moment is when it hit me. It was like, holy shit. So that what we saw, everybody was just inside this computer program and all these bodies. It was like this, and it hit me. It like just viscerally penetrated me. And the way they did that, I just thought it was beautiful.
Oh, it was so visceral. You're right. You're so right. It was horrific. It was horrific. Yeah, they did it. They did a really good job with that.
Yeah, and I could feel it. I had that sinking feeling in my stomach, almost like I was like experiencing it with him. That.
Yes, they did. They did a great job with that. It's, yeah, and it really, I mean, overall, obviously the parallel between, that matrix, what that reality is, and, in higher states of consciousness where we realize that, yes, there is something greater than us, and it's more powerful than we can comprehend. And, it was menacing in the Matrix, but I think most of us are hopefully believe that this greater power is loving, is fueled on love. And so, but that, I mean, that really is something I can think about every day, because the Matrix, the film, is a visceral experience of something that we maybe theorize more, is more something that we think about being a part of something greater, right? And when we see it represented in the Matrix, and feel the expansion, and also just the depth of that different reality. And anyway, it's very, it's tragic in the Matrix, and then I was able at least to flip it and feel the beauty of our potential Matrix.
Yeah. And if you watch all three films, the final ending of the third film is that beautiful sunset, that beautiful sunrise, I think, or the lights.
Well, now I have to watch the other two because, again, I don't even know that I watched the third, because 20 years ago I thought, oh, that's an action movie. It's kind of cool, but that's not my thing, and I don't know if I don't remember the third. I must have watched the second, but, now because you said that, I have to watch the other two.
Yeah.
It's only two, right?
Christ.
Okay.
It's 3 films. Yeah, that's 3.
So 2 after The Matrix.
Yeah.
So 3 total, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, and then what were you going to say about Christ?
Neo actually has, there's really that final scene. He has fought Smith. He's been, he's been blinded, and he's laying there with his arms like that, and actually, if you look at the film, right before that, when that moment, the final moments, he surrenders his life to Smith and lets Smith kind of, try to take him over. But instead, he opens the conduit for this greater force to shatter everything open. And we see his image burn with light. And there's actually, if you look closely, at the center of him, he's like this, and it's like he's filled with light, and there's a cross where his heart is. And then he collapses, and he's taken off into the machine world heaven, whatever you want. And it ends with the Matrix being reborn with a beautiful penetration of light. So it's a beautiful kind of full arc.
Well, it's such a beautiful arc, and the other part of the film with obviously the other evil person, the one who betrays, the Judas, just it had me thinking how many people would and are living in this lower state of consciousness, this, don't show me that there's any different reality. I want my comforts, and ignorance is bliss. And, and the lengths to which they're willing to go to protect that false reality and their comforts. Such a contrast.
And that's such an important message today.
Exactly. So important.
Because so many of us in the world are maybe unconsciously feeling this big transition we're facing, and recoiling in fear and saying, no, I don't, it's like, that's not real, global warming isn't real, that's, this is not, because, it threatens our whole reality.
That's right. Yeah, it's so threatening. Yeah, so that's, it's one of those things where the computer programmer, I can't remember his name, he rises as well, and he really saves everything, because otherwise they all would have perished, right? Mm-hmm. Or at least been found by the machinery. So it is a little bit like it would need a miracle, right, to happen if he's going to be the one, right? And that miracle happens. So you know, miracles can happen every day. They can happen every day. So
yeah, and they tend to start with consciousness.
yes.
As you were talking, I thought of this one scene, and then we can let this go. But the scene where in the second film, I think it's the end of the second film, where he is outside of the matrix and they're inside the the underground, the tunnels and all that, and their ship is disabled, and they're trying to escape from the machines, and suddenly Neo stops. Everyone is running, but he stops and he turns. And then Trinity says, "What are you doing? What are you doing? We have to go." He says, No, I feel them. I feel them. Something's different. I could do this." And he puts up his hand and he stops them in the real world. That moment where he, it's no longer inside the matrix where he can stop bullets and stop things. Now, in reality, in the real world, he can stop things.
Wow. Okay, I can't wait to see this again. What a message.
He felt it. He believed, I could do this.
To me is the real power behind this film, right? Is not only we create our reality, but we can create our possibilities.
Yeah.
We have that power within us, all of us.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah. Well, Mark, I'll let you wrap up, and Sue, and thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So Mark, thank you. And I want to just say, obviously we are planting seeds ourselves with the hope that we will be able to offer a course with you that actually teaches filmmakers how to embed the structures into the filmmaking that they're doing. We know that you offer this service as well, currently for private sessions and whatnot. And we are so grateful to obviously have had this discussion with you. And, I know if people have questions, they can reach out to you within the network. And we look forward to your May 1st announcement of the next movie of the month. And I want to thank everybody for joining us. And thank you very much again for your time and expertise.
And thank you all for being here.
Yeah, thank you.